Welcome back, everybody, to your daily update on the state of Corel Galen, and this might just be the last one for a while because we're wrapping up Forge of Darkness. I finished it this morning, noon-ish, I guess. So let's talk about the rest of it, I guess, and see where things were going and what to take from it, and also like wrap it up for a while. I'll do some random stuff for the next couple of days. I have some ideas, and then we'll start with The God Is Not Willing on next Thursday, I guess. And I'll see how I'll do that. I might just go like much quicker through that and not have like a daily update, but more like in like chapter updates every time I read a chapter. That's sort of an idea that I might go through. Is like read a chapter, make a quick video, read the next chapter, make a quick video, and so forth, and just publish them as I go along. We'll see where that's going, but until then, I certainly want to do a bit more like Black Company and things like that, in a way, and maybe abstract Malaz and stuff as well. So let's actually do this. Cheers. So let's go through stuff that happens in the last chapters. Momentous shit goes down, like world things and so forth, and also a lot of like personal things. I guess that's sort of what I really appreciate about the Forge of Darkness compared to, or Carcanas probably in general, but Forge of Darkness in specific now compared to the Malazan Book of the Fallen. I know there's like this criticism out there that Stephen Erickson is not good at writing romance, and while I don't agree with it necessarily, I see that there's not that much romance going on in the Malazan Book of the Fallen because it's military fantasy with all the stuff that goes into military fantasy. Um, but I feel that with Forge of Darkness, a lot of like some of the more interesting aspects of it are actually the romantic elements, like the relationship stuff, the whether it is just like romantic love or more on the sexual side of it. But it's very interesting that he takes a lot of that in here and shows very clearly that he's very capable of like really expressing the more like these like delicate, I think delicate is a good word here, like these delicate weird facets that make interpersonal relationships and romance and love and desire so fascinating and so difficult to write about and so difficult to think about and so difficult to verbalize. Like I'm not good at it, like look at me. See, the point is, in like these discussions that we have between Pharaohand and Spinok Durav and the captain whose name I've forgotten because I'm an idiot. Anyway, that like interesting web of desire there, or the really complex thing that we have with Kagamantra Tulas and that other Ankadu sister whose name I've forgotten, because I'm still not good at names. I'm an idiot. Anyway, we have these aspects there, and what we see there is like once again the idea of like how people fall in love or don't fall in love, how expectations, societal expectations, self worth, images of self worth and self esteem, how those things play into how we approach love or relationships. I feel it's like a testament to For the darkness how much of it is about such subjects. Sorry. Um, how much of it is about such subjects, and it's still being like epic fantasy, like epic to the max, but we still have a lot of discussions of love and what love actually means, how it works, how it maybe doesn't work, how we approach it, how we manage to fuck it up. Because more often than not we as human beings and taste manage to really fuck up relationships. So there's that, and I really appreciate that, because I feel it's like something that we often overlook, and a lot of fantasy doesn't deal with it unless it's explicitly like romantic fantasy, which has its fans. I guess I'm not one of them, but I guess it's because it's sort of not the type of like the representation of like interpersonal relationships in romantic fantasy is so far away from what I personally, from my personal experiences, that I just don't want to go there that much. But the point is, once again, that I feel Steven Erickson manages to show the complexity, these like really fascinating webs of connections and whatnot that we build up in our relationships with other people, no matter the gender at this point. But in this case, explicitly also romantic love. He just manages to actually weave those aspects into something that is at its core still epic fantasy, and I find that very like admirable in a way, and I think people should give him more credit for that, because yeah, a lot of that is like just like very very realistic. It's not it's not always good. Actually, most of the time it's not good. But when you have like people like Hishtula, who kind of has given up on like ever finding true love because of what how she did these things before and so forth, and now she has found grip, which is awesome. And yeah, that like very strained thing between Kagamander Tulas and Pharaoh Hand that is not even yet a thing, and all these other. Yeah, as I said, it's like it's messy. It's very much not what you really like, how we usually describe love, but it's much closer to realistic depictions of that. And to see that in something that is ostensibly about a civil war in a fantasy world is pretty cool. Just saying. All right, what else? We have like momentous things happening with the birth of light in a way, the changing of the Leosan of Urisander into Father Light, the running away of Kagamander Tulas, who doesn't want to do that. So, I mean, we'll see where that's going. We have the return of Draconis, bringing back the thing that I thought was going to be Dragonpour. It's not. It's the gate of Corel Galen. Isn't that fun? What an idiot I was to think otherwise. So yeah, actually things. I mean, there was like hints before, and I just didn't look at it before. I didn't know. There was a situation where it was like talked about an end to wandering. Yeah, now he's nailed down that gate, and that means other gates are also actually nailed down. Before that, you had all these like places. Corel Galen was just a country next to another country in a way, which is interesting, but maybe not what it's going to be. So yeah, I mean, how to say? Yeah, we start to have these opposites now. We have these different forces. Forces are actually settling down, and One thing that I found very interesting here is another parallel in a way that I wasn't aware of before. Mm, the parallel of Hood on the one side and his army, and we need to talk about that at some point, of Hood's like hopeless crusade against death, hopeless war against death on the one side, and we have on the other side Anamander Rake, who also decides to do the things he does, even though he knows, and like everyone knows, that he can't actually fully succeed at what he aims for. So this idea that we have, that sometimes we have to do something even though we know it doesn't work. And we've spoken about that before, because in a way Draconis is the same kind of person. It's like, you can't fix everything, but maybe it's enough to try, because it's not trying and just giving up before you try would mean losing all your humanity, or personality, or what you want to call it, because they're obviously not human. Not human in the way that we think like human nowadays. But that's sort of the point that I find very interesting. There is like these parallels, like how many of these people are fighting or trying hopeless things, but keep on, even though they know that they can't succeed at what they're doing, but they're going to do it anyway because they have to. um there's that, and I appreciate that. The next thing obviously is the whole idea of how far like violence, if there's enough pressure, and this is, I guess, the other thing that we need to talk about is Thais society being this stratified, this like structured and rigid. Rigid is the word I was looking for. Thais feudalistic society being this rigid means that like pressures that build, especially like economic pressures and so forth, that build from the ground up. That once they actually burst through, it really wrecks everything, right? Which explains the extreme explosions of violence that you have there with parts of Urisander's legion. Plus, you have someone. Obviously, you have someone like Hanral who does terrible things in a calculating manner, like the whole poisoning of the entire Hust Legion. What a fucking move! Now, I didn't see that coming until like the end. But holy shit, that was brutal. Like in an especially brutal way. So yeah, there's that. Um, we'll see where this whole thing is going, but the idea we have now is obviously that we have the Leosan, we have Father Light, we have Mother Dark, we have the power of Corel Ghislaine that turns everyone black, or dark skinned, that comes into touch with it and kneels to it, like the Tist Andy. And then we have those that are turned white by Sintara, the other high priestess, the high priestess of light. And we have dragons, because there was a portal and 9 dragons came through. Isn't that fun? So there's that. We have the battle. Like, so I'm jumping around because once again I read this morning and there was like other stuff happening the rest of the day. But one thing that I found really fascinating, and I'm really looking forward to finding out more about it and walking in Follow Light, and possibly at some point Walk in Shadow, is how does Scarabandaris turn into Scavendari Bloodeye? Because right now he seems super honorable and disgusted by all the stuff that has happened in his absence, and he goes away, and good for Narat to actually follow him and accept, like, break out of that hole that he kind of fell into it. So there's that. But still, I don't know. What happens to change him into the person that we know from the prologue of Midnight Tides? I'm just not sure. But it's going to be interesting. Another thing I feel is that aspect that comes with darkness and light, where we have light that is all about certainty and justice. I mean, you can see where the justice thing comes from with Urisander studying all those Focral Assail Foricon scrolls and shit like that, and their notion of justice. And wasn't it funny that even now when they had that talk between Kilmandaras and Draconis in chapter 19, not 19, 17, I think. In chapter 17, about the Foricon having new god, having made justice their god and bleeding it and perverting it until it dies. And isn't that funny that it's already happened? So there's that. But not exactly where I wanted to go. Um, but the point there, you can see how how light is connected to certainty in a way, and darkness is sort of the absence of answers. And Mother Dark trying to keep aloof and stay away from, and not giving answers, and making uncertainty the thing. I feel that's an interesting and important aspect, because there will always be things that we don't know, and accepting the fact that there's things that we can't know, holy shit, is something that I find like super difficult. But maybe that's just me. But I feel it's like something that really helps us understanding life and coming to terms with our existence as people in a way. So there's that idea that you have like uncertainty, or not uncertainty, but certainty on the one hand, compared to a lack of firm definitions or firm answers. A lack of answers, I feel, is probably more the correct word here. You have that, and that's an interesting opposite. Also, we see that point that you need like polar opposites in a way for existence. Something that we've also seen in the Malazan Book of the Fallen, especially in Dust of Dreams, with when Khaled has that vision or gets that information from the Kachain Chamal, whom we haven't seen yet. So that's going to be interesting when they show up. So yeah, there is that aspect. We also have a new way to look at the Sheikh, because now we know why the Sheikh will wander to the shore, because they were obviously believing in the river god. The river god has died. Now the Draconis has forced darkness, a sanctification of darkness with his gift to Mother Dark. And we'll see how that goes. Yeah, another thing that I wanted to look at was the battle at House Drakons. That was very interesting, because it really showed a how underestimating your opponents, and how a technical technological training differences are like exactly what is important there. You have a highly disciplined, well armored cavalry there that just like kills the border swords who just don't get it. I feel that's like an extremely fascinating bit in its clinical approach. Right, we have the battle, we see it from above. It's just like they ride into a dust cloud. One side rides out, the rest is dead. And before that argument that we have with Captain, oh gods, I keep forgetting his name. Something Bilwis, whatever. That guy, House Captain of House Drakons, and Sanderlath, and they have that conversation about keeping your nerve is what is important about a battle. Like the side that keeps their nerve a bit longer, then the other side will be the one that wins. And that also being the case in arguments. Which, yeah, I see the point with arguments. Arguments so often are about stamina, who has like more patience and will just like keep at it longer. Which works, I guess, in a one-on-one argument, but it kind of falls apart when you have like modern social media where you can just like recruit more people whenever you feel like it. So I'm not sure if that still works, but the idea is there. But what I found most interesting there is really the way the battle just falls out, where you have just like one force being so far superior to the other and just like clinically just wiping them away in a second. It's no, not even you don't even go close in there that much. Although Rind gets his death, and have you ever spoken about how good Steven Erikson is at actually writing death scenes? Like this whole like zooming in onto one person while they die, and no matter who dies, he manages to always, like almost always, make you feel for the person dying, no matter how dumb or evil or whatever they were before. It always feels you always feel for those people when they just like shrink back to that like almost childlike person before, and that I feel was like is just incredible. It works in the Malazan Book of the Fallen. It works here again, and yeah, just just really well done. All right, one final thing there. The that final scene. Although, like two things. There's that one scene where who said it? It wasn't Anomander. Um, oh, I can't remember. But one of them said there will be war, which echoes with that there will be peace. And then we still have, and this is like the coming full circle thing, when Anomander and Endas Silan come to the house of Andarist and find Kaladin Brood, and they decide to go, and that like, well, decide is not the right word, but now that Kaladin Brood and Anomander Rake are bound together and all of that, and we come back to the point like, yes, there will be peace, which I like that. It's like you have all this mess, and I found that like an interesting aspect. Like I'm getting carried away again. Point is, I really appreciate how we start with there will be peace and how we almost end with there will be peace. Apart from like that like last scene with Hood's army, I really appreciate that. Now let's jump back to what I also wanted to look at, and that being that a civil war, and there's like it might have been Hishtula, it might have been Silchas, I don't know who said it. Like that everyone was talking about civil war and that it will be coming, and now that it has come, everyone is surprised by how chaotic, fucked up it is, and like how much it is a loss of control for everyone involved. Like that's the interesting, important bit there. It's like it's like once those events start, everyone is caught up in them, and no one has control over them. Not Hanral, who kind of started the entire thing. Not Anomander Rake. No, no one has control over. No one has control over what is going on there. It's like those events have been kicked loose. There's so much pressure that was building under the surface of this really strict and rigid like class society, and now that it's broken up, it just sweeps everything away. And that's how social dynamics work. That's how civil wars work. That's how rebellions work. That's just how it is. So yeah, there's that. Also, Orphantel, what a sweet boy, poor bastard. And once again, Silchas ruined best boy. Him being the nice guy and just taking Orphantel there and talking to him in like a humane way. I feel that's like really really the thing there, right? Silch's Rune is from the three brothers the most human one, the decent one. Like Andaris, we haven't seen that much from him yet. He's like emotional and everything, but Silch's Rune is the one who actually tries to be a human person, or in this case, a Tice. Hangs out with people, gets drunk, helps a kid because he's a nice guy and he's not all like discipline and whatnot like Anamander, and not all emotion and love like Andorus. No, he's just like an actual average, like an understandable person in a way. So that's cool, like really cool. So yeah, now I've totally messed up the like overall structure of this ramble because I'm rambling. So let's have a look at Forge of Darkness overall before I end this, because yeah, you know, darkness is kind of falling. I really appreciated reading. I really liked Forge of Darkness. I have no idea how Fall of Light will be, apart from like almost double the length. I know that, but I liked the fact that the pace was much slower. Not that much slower. I mean, there's a shit ton of things going on, right? There's a lot happening, but we have a smaller cast of people. We have a smaller. It just feels more manageable, and it feels like we have more time, or get the people that are in this story. We get to meet them much closer, in a way. And yeah, I just forgot to talk about the new horror elements with with envy, spite, and malice, and the Hansel and Gretel thing when they burned their sister because fucking hell. Anyway, let's go back to what I wanted to talk about. I felt like characterizations are much clearer, much deeper, and much more faceted in a way. Um, Even though it's a short book, it just all felt more immediate in a way, which is interesting because the Malazan Book of the Fallen has like super close action and whatnot. But I feel like Malazan sometimes feels a bit frenzied in its pace because there's so much happening, and Forge of Darkness doesn't feel like that. It feels clearer in a way. The other thing that I really appreciate about it is like you have this like, yeah, this is what happens in Corald Galen. This is like thousands and thousands of years before. It doesn't feel like that. It still feels like very immediate. When you have this idea like, yeah, the Silmarillion is whatever happens thousands and thousands of years before Lord of the Rings, and you look at it and it has that like mythological language, and like that very very like huge distance between the reader and the characters that makes it so difficult for a lot of people to read. Forge of Darkness doesn't have that. Those characters are still very very close. They swear, they have rather explicit sex compared to the Malazan Book of the Fallen. It doesn't feel like that, which I think is really interesting and important, because we hear about all these events that happen in the Carcanas trilogy, in Carcanas and all of that stuff. We hear of all of that stuff in the Malazan Book of the Fallen, and it has that mythic quality to it. But what we realize here is that when you're there at those events that become mythic later on, they were still just like average human events. They were still like all these like terrible things that average like normal human or Teist. It's as sordid as it can be, and we just like over time through history and mythology and all of that stuff, we sand away all the sordidness, and like What remains are these symbols and these ideals and these icons and whatnot, and what we make of it when we turn it into first history, which is one level of abstraction, and then we turn it into mythology, which is like next level of abstraction in a way. So actually seeing these events that are hinted at in the Malazan Book of the Fallen are described as mythological almost in the Book of the Fallen, to see them and just realize that those are still average people trying to survive and get their shit together and get their lives in order and whatnot, I think is a really important thing. There's a really important lesson to learn, because it's like when we read history, like more like historiography and the like pop culture historiography that most of us read when we read history books and whatnot. When we read mythology, if we read mythology and stuff like that, and we have that like immense distance between us and the people in those that show up in those texts that we read. It's like, but you know, those were probably average people just trying to survive, just like we are trying to survive. And I feel Forge of Darkness transports that in a magnificent way by just being so very much not mythology and just basically medieval fantasy that is very much about class struggles and the beginnings of religion and questions of like how religion can be used as a tool for political means. And it's even like explicitly there's like, I keep forgetting who it was. It might be Joris Sander who says that, or Khaled Hossein. I keep forgetting. One of them says like, you know, faith is between the individual and their God. Everything beyond that is a tool, is just a varnish for political machinations. Which is, I feel, maybe a bit too cynical of you for religion, but it's not too far off either. So, yeah. I'm really glad I finally got to read Forge of Darkness. I should have read it like years ago, I guess. But you know, I'm traumatized by by A Song of Ice and Fire and Kingkiller Chronicles, and I try to not start open series, unended, unfinished series. So that's what held me back. I'm regretting it now, but I'm glad I finally read it, and I can't wait to start with Fall of Light. It's already the audiobook's already downloaded on my phone, and I'll get to it immediately after The God Is Not Willing. So yeah, that's sort of my thoughts on Forge of Darkness. Fucking amazing book. One of my favorite, I guess, because it shows like more variance in Steven Erikson's writing, and yeah, pretty cool. I guess that's it for today. I'll see you tomorrow for I don't know what. And until then, cheers.